Okay, so can love really conquer all?
Right.
Like, really?
Yeah.
You've given us some research on love and relationships, and it made me wonder, can love bridge the gap when couples come from totally different backgrounds?
It's an age-old question, isn't it?
Right. And we're diving into it today. We're talking income, education,
Mm.
culture, all that stuff. What makes those relationships work or totally fall apart when money, culture, all that gets in the way?
Well, the research you sent is a great place to start. It gets into some fascinating detail.
Exactly, the deep dive. So to get us going, can you break down this idea of socioeconomic backgrounds? What does it even mean in the context of relationships?
It's a good question because it's more than just like looking at someone's bank account, right?
Right.
It's this whole mix of things that shape who we are and what we value. Income matters, sure, but also education, the kind of work we do, even the culture we grew up with.
So it's like this invisible baggage we all carry around?
Exactly. And all those experiences, they shape how we see the world, what we want in a partner, even how we argue. It all plays a role.
Fascinating. So is the research saying that, like, shared backgrounds make for smoother relationships?
That's one of the arguments, yeah. It makes sense when you think about it.
Right, like if you both agree on what success looks like, that's got to count for something, right? Whether it's kids or work-life balance or whatever.
Absolutely. Couples with similar backgrounds, they often just agree on the big stuff. How to raise kids, how to manage money. Those things can be harder to navigate when you don't start from the same place.
And speaking of money, that's a big one. The research talked a lot about financial stress. Did that surprise you?
Not really, no. It's a huge source of conflict for couples. Actually, there was one statistic. I think it was couples who argue about money in that first year of marriage. They're way more likely to divorce later on.
Wow.
Yeah, money issues. They
Yeah.
can really do a number on a relationship.
So, like, even if similar incomes don't equal perfect harmony, could it at least mean fewer arguments early on? Those early fights that can turn into bigger problems down the road?
Potentially, yeah. It's not a guarantee, but it can reduce some of the initial friction. Couples with different incomes can make it work, of course, but it often means being extra careful about finances right from the start.
Like you're merging two different financial cultures. And
Yeah.
speaking of culture, it's more than just like knowing the same slang or
Sure.
whatever, right?
Way more. Yeah, shared culture is like, it's a shortcut in a relationship.
How so?
It affects how you talk to each other, show affection, even your sense of humor, like this whole cultural capital you bring to the table.
Cultural capital. Yeah, I'm gonna need you to unpack that one. What does that even mean?
So it's basically the idea that we inherit all this knowledge, these habits, even tastes, from our upbringing and social class. And all that plays a role in how we relate to our partners, even if we don't realize it.
So even subconsciously, our backgrounds are shaping how we interact with the person we love.
Exactly. It can be this amazing thing, this unspoken bond, but if you're not careful, it can also lead to misunderstandings.
So we've got shared values, maybe less money stress, this deep cultural connection. It's a good case for having similar backgrounds, but I know the research doesn't stop there, right? What about opposites attract?
Right. It's definitely not one size fits all. There are tons of couples who come from totally different worlds and make it work. And the research gets into why that is.
Okay, so tell me, how can having different backgrounds actually be a good thing for a couple? I'm really curious about that.
One of the biggest perks is personal growth. When you're exposed to different values, ways of life, it challenges your assumptions and helps you grow in ways you might not expect. It's like, you know that saying, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Maybe relationships are like that too.
Ooh, I like that.
You know, like it's good to be challenged by your partner's experiences to keep growing together.
Totally. And it's not just personal growth either, right? The research also mentioned adaptability.
Huge one.
Navigating those differences, it's like couples learn to be expert problem solvers.
100%. When you build a relationship on understanding differences, it takes communication, compromise. And those are skills that work everywhere, right?
It's like relationship cross-training. You get good at it, and suddenly you're better at work, with friends, even with family, probably.
Exactly. It spills over into all these other areas of life.
Okay, so we've got personal growth, we've got adaptability. The research also mentioned something about expanding worldviews as a benefit. What does that even look like in a real relationship, though? Is it like arguing about politics every night at dinner?
Hopefully not. Okay, good. It's more like your relationship becomes this space for like cross-cultural exchange, but with higher stakes.
Higher stakes, but hopefully better snacks than like a UN meeting or something.
Right, exactly. You're constantly learning from each other, trying new things. It's about pushing past your own limited view of the world.
Okay, yeah, that's way more appealing than my political debate scenario. So it could be as simple as trying new foods, listening to different music, just having those conversations that make you think differently.
Exactly. And the cool thing is, it keeps things interesting. There's always something new to discover, even years down the line.
That's awesome. Now, I know we've been talking research, but I'm always curious about the real world stuff. The source material included those sound bites from actual couples, right? Some with similar backgrounds, some
Or
totally different. Did you notice any patterns in what they said?
Oh, definitely. The couples with similar backgrounds, they often talked about this, like ease they felt right from the start, like they just got each other.
It's interesting.
But the couples with different backgrounds, they talked more about how much they'd learned from each other. Like those differences, yeah, sometimes they were hard, but they also made things exciting. It really showed there's no right answer. The best background for a relationship, it all depends on the people.
There's no magic formula. It's about finding what works for you.
Exactly.
And speaking of finding what works, the research did highlight one major key to success, no matter your background.
Communication.
Oh, absolutely. It seems kind of obvious, but it feels even more important when you're dealing with different expectations around money, family,
Yeah.
all that.
It's the foundation, right?
Yeah.
Communication. But it's even more crucial when you're blending different backgrounds, different values. All that has to be talked about.
And we're not just talking about, like, talking more. It's about how you talk,
Mm.
especially when things get tough.
You got it. The research really highlighted two things: open, honest dialogue.
Okay, so being honest.
Yeah, but also that willingness to compromise. Without those two, even couples with the best intentions, they can run into trouble.
It's like, how do you even have those conversations?
Mm.
Especially about touchy subjects,
Yeah.
money, family. How do you do that without it turning into a huge fight?
It's tough, for sure. It takes practice.
It does.
The biggest thing is making sure both people feel safe, heard, even when you disagree on something. Like, really listening to each other is so important. Not just waiting for your turn to talk, but actually hearing what the other person is saying.
Oh, that's hard. It's so easy to get defensive. Like if my partner questions how I spend money, I instantly want to be like, it's my money. I earned it.
Right.
Even if they're not trying to be mean, it feels personal.
It totally does. We all have those insecurities, right? That's why compromise is so important.
Mm.
And compromise, it doesn't always mean meeting in the middle. Sometimes it's about finding something totally new that works for both of you.
Ooh, finding something new. I like that. So it's less about digging in your heels and more like being creative.
Hmm.
Can you give me an example of what that looks like in a real relationship, I mean?
Okay, so let's say one person's a saver and the other's a spender. Instead of arguing about every single purchase, maybe they agree to have fun money each month. A set amount they can each spend, no judgment.
Oh, that's smart.
That way they're both getting what they need, but they're also respecting the overall financial picture.
Exactly. No one's changing their whole personality. They're just finding a system that works.
Right. Or think about holidays, especially if you're from different backgrounds, different traditions. Instead of one person feeling like their traditions don't matter, maybe they blend them. Or they alternate years. Or they even come up with new traditions together.
You're full of good ideas today,
It's all about finding those win-win situations.
which is good advice for A and Y relationship, really, not just romantic ones.
For sure.
So it sounds like the big takeaway here is whether you have tons in common or you're total opposites, what really matters is how you communicate, how adaptable you are, and how much you're willing to grow, both as individuals and together. What a fascinating deep dive this has been. And for everyone listening, here's something to think about. The research mentioned that even when couples start out with different backgrounds, the longer they're together, the more similar their values become. Why do you think that is? Is it compromise? Or just going through life together? Or is it something even deeper? That's something for you to ponder as you continue exploring this topic. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.